Okay, I have to say, Sal DiStefano's podcast was probably one of my favorite interviews that I got to do in all of the Optimal Body RX series. So I'm so excited to get you guys to listen in on today's episode. But if you don't know Sal, you need to know Sal, but he's one of the most sought after speakers and experts in the fitness and the health industry. And he is just a wealth of knowledge. He has an incredible passion for fitness, for helping people. He really takes a science-based approach with everything. And he tries to break through a lot of the myths when it comes to dieting, which is exactly what we do on this podcast. We talk about myths when it comes to fasting, small frequent meals, all of that y'all want to know that you hear about all the time in the fitness industry. We're going to be talking about it today. So welcome, Sal DiStefano. Do you guys know how difficult it is to find a high quality supplement line that doesn't just destroy your gut? Most pre-workouts and post-workouts, or even like on-the-go snack options like beef jerky or protein bars, they're terrible for your gut health. They're full of xanthan gum and guar gums and fillers and artificial sweeteners, which disrupt your gut microbiome and lead to chronic bloating, constipation, diarrhea, and not to mention when our gut is off, all of the other symptoms like hormone imbalances, thyroid issues, mental health issues, which is why I'm just obsessed about gut health. But anywho, I have not been able to find a good supplement line out there, and I had to cut out all of these fitness type supplements when I was really struggling with a lot of my own gut issues. Until recently, I found Paleo Valley. And Paleo Valley is one of the first supplement companies that hands down is incredible for your gut health, whether you're on a gut healing journey or you're someone who just wants to optimize your gut health and overall health. Their founder, Autumn, actually suffered with IBS herself. So she created this entire supplement line specifically to be gut friendly. And I'm not lying with you guys. Their whey protein powder, which is grass-fed and finished, gum-free, artificial sweetener-free, no issues. No bloating, no constipation, no diarrhea, no upset stomach, which is literally like the first time in my entire life that I've not had issues with the protein powder. And they even have super yummy grass-fed and finished beef jerky sticks, which are made with a collagen casing instead of the typical citric acid casing, which is terrible for your gut health. And if you want to try out some of their other products, they even have a bone broth protein powder. I love adding that into whether it's like my oatmeal in the morning or my protein shakes. It literally tastes like the Nestle hot chocolate powders, if you ever had those as a kid, which were not gut friendly. And then they have great supplements too, like their apple cider vinegar capsules or even their turmeric capsules, which are great for inflammation and gut health. So if you want to get a discount, you can use my code using the link in the show notes here, which is paleovalley.com/Rachel Scheer podcast. But all of that's going to be in the show notes. So check out the supplement line because guys, you know me, I would not have this on my podcast if it was not awesome and gut friendly. Sal, you are the host of the #1 fitness and health podcast, Mind Pump, and you have changed the name of the game in the fitness industry. Can we say that?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I don't know if we have, but we're trying to.
I think you guys definitely have. And I love that you use your platform to break through common misconceptions in the fitness industry and really take a research-based approach because there's a lot of BS out there. Let's be real. And this is Optimal Body RX. And today I'm super excited to dive into what your approach is and looks like and break through a lot of these myths that we see out there. But before we dive into some of those myths, what is your opinion of an optimal body composition that people should have?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a bit of a range, and I could give a general number of body fat percentages for men and women and muscle mass, but I think you'll reach your optimum body composition so long as you're mobile, healthy, strong, and you have a good relationship with food and exercise, which is how we achieve balance. Generally speaking, for men, body fat percentage wise, you're probably looking at 9 to 16% body fat. For women, probably 18 to 25% body fat. But, it really depends on your relationship with exercise and food. And if you are generally healthy and balanced, you'll fall within a healthy range for yourself. So I like to talk about it that way, because if I give people specific numbers, sometimes they can do things in ways that aren't necessarily healthy or optimal to try to accomplish a particular number. And maybe they'll ignore other signs like how they feel and energy and mood. And again, like I mentioned earlier, the relationship to exercise and nutrition. And as you probably already know, in our space, there's a lot of dysfunctional relationships with exercise and nutrition, even with people, or especially sometimes with people who seem to look like they have it all together. So that's what we try to speak to.
Yeah, 100%. And I competed in bodybuilding actually for 3 years. And on the outside looking in, I was probably, as a female, at, I think, 10% body fat, which it was just pretty low. I still had a cycle, so I didn't have any of things like that going on that was really bad. But, I ended up with other health issues, actually gut issues in particular, which is where I got into the line of work that I currently do, which is taking more of a gut-centric approach to health. But yeah, I could say I was physically fit, but I was unhealthy on the inside. And I think that is commonly what we see, where people just focus more so on the number. I know I was fixated on having to be at like a perfect body fat percentage, or what was, I don't know, my opinion of a perfect body fat percentage. It was nobody else's. And it ended up being a detriment to my health. So I love that you talk a lot about, like, are you feeling your best every single day? Do you have energy? Are you getting the movement in? And is it really adding to your life? I would say that's like one of the big questions we want to ask, because a lot of people try to attain what we say is the quote unquote perfect body, but it takes away from their life. And then it's like, why are we even really doing this in the first place?
Yeah. No, that's great, because you have your extreme endeavors. You competed in bodybuilding, right? So that would be like an extreme endeavor. High level athletics would be another one. But I worked with, for over 2 decades, everyday average people. And so a lot of what I communicate is, how you can do this for the rest of your life, not just for a show or for a competition. And there's value in training for those types of things, and training in extreme ways, and being unbalanced in the pursuit of accomplishment. I can see value in that. But for most people, most of the time, there's got to be this sustainable, balanced, quality of life improving approach. And so a lot of what you'll hear me communicate on my podcast, for example, revolves around that. So I can definitely speak to the extremes, but I like to speak more towards a sustainable, lifelong approach, because let's be honest, bodybuilders aren't having trouble getting shredded. It's the average person that's having trouble, maintaining good health.
Yeah. Do you also think there's a point of net negative with trying to have like a very lean body composition? For example, like bodybuilders, right? Like we talk about, like, get more muscle, like get as much muscle as possible, which we know muscle is great. It's going to help with glucose disposal. It's anti-inflammatory. As we get older, we tend to atrophy a lot of our muscle. So strength training and focusing on optimizing our muscle is essential. But is there a point where, I guess I'm trying to say, putting on too much muscle, or that can be detrimental? And I know for a lot of people who are probably doing it more naturally, they won't have the means to.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's so much the muscle that's the issue. It's more of the ways that we pursue maximum muscle. So if you look at, if you have longevity and you have maximum performance, those are two spheres, and there's an intersection somewhere in the middle, right? If I go extreme longevity, I'm going to sacrifice a lot of maximum performance and strength and speed. If I go pure maximum performance and speed and strength, I'm going to sacrifice a lot of longevity. In the middle is this nice balance, because longevity is great, but there's also quality of life. And then performance is great, but if you sacrifice health in pursuit of high level performance, and you also sacrifice that quality of life. So I don't think it's necessarily the having too much muscle that's the issue, but rather the ways that people try to pursue that. So if you look at someone in the extreme endeavors of muscle building, it's the, high levels of calories, right? Lots of consumption of food and calories. Even if it's healthy, it's just a high amount. It's the, you tend to overtrain. you tend to overload the body. You tend to use more resistance than is appropriate sometimes. So injury rates tend to be higher. Supplementation tends to get more extreme, right? So because you're constantly pursuing this extreme amount of muscle, you can sacrifice longevity and health mainly through the ways that you pursue it. So I don't think it's like if you do it naturally and you do it in a balanced way, you're going to get a nice, healthy, muscular physique. But if you want to gain another 10 pounds beyond that, then you're going to have to push the limits a little bit. And the way that you push the limits will take away from longevity. And I'm the first person to say that you have to determine what that quality of life looks like for you and what is a beneficial sacrifice to you. Like, is it worth it to sacrifice connecting with friends and family because you can never miss a day at the gym, right? Maybe it is, probably not though, right? Is it beneficial to, is it worth it to you to eat, to force feed yourself to gain that extra pound of muscle and sacrifice kind of your emotional well-being? I mean, I don't know, probably not, but I think only the individual can answer that. So there's definitely an intersection between longevity, health, and performance, and you can go extreme in any direction. And the more you go in one direction, the more you lose the others.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I know, like, kind of going back to when I competed, I lost out on a lot of that. And I was bringing like my meal prep food everywhere I went. And it reached a point where it wasn't really serving my happiness, and it really wasn't serving the lifestyle that I really ultimately wanted. And it was taking away. So I'd agree, like finding that middle place of one, longevity, but also having the lifestyle that you want, right? I could have probably maintained 10% body fat naturally, genetically. I'm a pretty lean person, but I would miss out on a lot of other things in my life. And then it's just like, okay, what's the point? So I just look great in the mirror and for my own ego and boosting that every single day.
And I think there's also, I also don't want to overlook the things we can learn from people who take things to those extremes, right? So for example, bodybuilders or, bodybuilders being the extreme, muscle building route, bodybuilders will do things like they'll say, fasted cardio is a great way to burn body fat. Now the data shows that it doesn't make a difference if you cardio fasted in the morning or you do it later in the day. But in real practice, when you have somebody do fasted cardio first thing in the morning, it tends to add activity. They tend to eat less because they don't eat first when they get up. So it affects behaviors that can take them down that path. So I think it's smart to look at the extremes and say, what can we learn from them? Can I, for example, there's some exercises that just are more effective at building strength and muscle. And the people in the extreme muscle building pursuits have figured that out. Well, if I'm the average person, maybe I don't want to necessarily go that far, but I only work out 2 days a week. Maybe I should do those exercises so I can get the most bang out of my buck. So there's a lot to learn from all of them. It's really fun.
Yeah. Do you think bulking and cutting is necessary to get to an optimal body composition, like an optimal amount of muscle for somebody for high metabolic rate, and then longevity, and then a low enough percent body fat where it's not too low, but it's at kind of where you said, maybe around 8%?
Well, okay. So there's a couple ways to look at this. First off, there's no real maintenance. We're either slight surplus, slight deficit, and it tends to balance out and keep us kind of in this balance. So we're either gaining or losing. Also, if you're looking at, more intentional bulking and cutting, I think there definitely can be some health values to them if you consider the way we evolved. Humans evolved during periods of feast and famine. So when we found food and we had food, we ate it. It's not like we left food, right? We ate it. And there were long periods of time when we didn't have food. So I think there's value in doing both. I also think, when you look at the data or just from an experience standpoint, the body tends to adapt and you start to get less of the benefits of one and more of the detriments. For example, let's say you're a female and you've dieted or over dieted a long time, done lots of cardio, lots of activity, metabolism is really adapted. You need to consume 1,300 calories a day, plus you're doing lots of cardio in order just to maintain yourself. A bulk would be very healthy. Now, imagine if she stayed on that bulk indefinitely. Well, at some point, it starts to not become very healthy. You don't get the muscle building effects. You don't get the hormone balancing effects. Now it kind of goes in the opposite direction. Same thing for the person who's in this perma bulk, right? They're constantly trying to gain weight. Well, they could benefit from the insulin sensitizing effects, from the protein synthesis, sensitivity effects of cutting, where they can actually maybe make their body more efficient at using nutrients for muscle by going on a short cut. So we recommend people do what are called mini bulks and mini cuts. Now, you can lean them more in one direction or the other depending on your goal. So if your goal is to gain, I like to tell people to do a bulk more consistently, but interrupt it with some mini cuts so that the body doesn't necessarily adapt as quickly. We get some of those health effects of the cut. And then if somebody's dieting, I'll do the same thing where they're cutting, and I like to interrupt those with some bulks. And then for people who are kind of happy where they're at and they like to just to continue progressing at a nice steady pace, I tend to recommend people do mini cuts and mini bulks, go through a phase of a 300 to 500 calorie surplus, and then go through a phase of a 300 to 500 calorie deficit, and notice and see how your body feels, how it affects your behaviors and your performance. There's a lot you can learn from it, and your food intake tends to change a little bit. When I tend to bulk, I eat more palatable food. When I tend to cut, I tend to eat food that's more satiating. I think we also negate the behavioral and psychological effects of doing these types of things where, I mean, let's be honest, the most important factor when it comes to maintaining a fit and healthy body isn't the workout or the diet or the sleep or the stress. It's the behaviors that lead to the workouts and the diets and the stress and the sleep that leads to a healthy lifestyle, right? It's the behavior. So the psychological component is very important. And can you learn from and benefit from doing a bulk when you're so afraid of gaining body fat for your whole life that you've always been on a cut, right? Or would you benefit from going on a cut when you're the skinny, like I was? When I was a kid, I was a skinny kid, so I was always trying to gain. Did I benefit from going on a cut? I did. Like I wasn't so afraid of not going without food for a couple hours. So there was definitely benefit there as well. So I don't want to negate that as well. I think the psychological benefit is quite important.
Yeah. And I like that you bring in the part of fasting and famine. Like that is something that we've done for a long time. And, I think fasting can even be beneficial for people who are trying to build muscle and doing that for a period of time. With your goal of, let's say doing mini bulks or mini cuts, and I know it's very individual to each person based off of their goals, but would you say there's a certain body fat percentage where you're like, okay, you're somebody who maybe wants to focus a little bit more on cutting is like a good rule of thumb, or you're someone who maybe wants to focus on bulking if somebody were to be listening to this?
Okay, so there's two things I would look at. There's definitely a body fat percentage that you tend to see poor health effects regardless of fitness level, regardless of diet. Okay, so in men, once you get beyond 19-20% body fat, regardless of how fit you are and how much you exercise, we start to see some negative effects. With women, it's after about 30% or so, you start to see negative effects. So that would be one consideration. On the lean end, and again, there's an individual variance here, just like there was with the higher body fat percentage. But on the lean end with men, you tend to see some negative effects when you get below, let's say, 8 to 7%. And with women, once you start to get to below 15% or so, then you start to see possible negative effects. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing to consider is I may have a guy who comes to me who's 23% body fat. So they're high, right? But when I have them track their calories and I look at their activity, let's say it's a 6-foot male, 260 pounds. He's 23% body fat. And he says, hey, I want to lose weight. And I say, okay, well, let's see where your caloric maintenance is. I'm going to have you track for the next 2 weeks. Just eat like you normally would. And let's see where your calories are at. And then he does that. And he comes to me and he goes, oh, I'm eating roughly 2,100 calories a day. Okay, well, you're a 260 pound, 6-foot guy. I'm not going to cut you at 2,100 calories. Where am I going to bring you? 1,500 calories, 1,400 calories? We're going to lose 15 pounds and then you're going to plateau. And then where do I go from there? So with that person, I'm actually, even though their body fat percentage isn't great, I'm actually going to put them in a slight surplus. I'm going to focus on building muscle, and I'm going to try to tip the metabolism in the positive, speed up the metabolism. Maybe get his metabolism, I've done this many times, get his metabolism to a maintenance of around 3,000 calories with minimal weight gain. So hopefully the weight on the scale doesn't change much. And then when we're at, about 3,000 calories, now I have room to cut. And now I can bring him down to a good body fat percentage and he's not stuck at this like super low, caloric intake that is impossible for him to maintain. And I would do the same thing for a woman. If a woman came to me, 170 pounds, 180 pounds, high body fat percentage, and we look at her calories, I'm like, you're eating 1,500 calories a day. Like, I'm not going to cut you. I would do the same thing. I would have her do a slight bulk, a reverse diet as it's known, speed up the metabolism, and then go from there. So there's a lot of individualism or individual variables that we're looking at when we're looking at this. There could also be hormonal issues, like if a man is really low testosterone, I would be more careful with the cut than I would if his testosterone were optimal. If a woman's hormones were imbalanced, depending on how they're currently eating, because sometimes a cut will balance that out as well, then I might be a little bit more weary of just going on a cut. So basing it just off body fat percentage, generally speaking, that's okay. But when you look at the individual, sometimes even that is not the right metric.
Yeah. And what I'm also hearing from you too is like the power of working with a professional, because a lot of people will look at themselves and just be like, based off of my current weight or even my body fat percentage, which a lot of people don't even have that information, right? They have no idea what percent body fat they have. And that can even be very different too. Like somebody who is 200 pounds at 10% body fat is going to be something that's very, very different than someone who's 120 pounds at 10% body fat. The metabolic rate is going to be very different. The amount of muscle and the amount of fat is going to be very different. So I can imagine that would also play a big role where both people could essentially be at 10% body fat, right? But their approach could still look very, very different.
Yeah. Ultimately, I would say if you're trying to lose weight, ask yourself, can I really reduce my calories from where they're at? And then can I keep them there forever? And if you're already feeling like I'm not eating much and I'm moving a lot, like you don't want to go down from there. Your goal should be to speed up your metabolism. Your goal, which should be for most people anyway, this tends to be the case anyway with someone who wants to lose weight, is my goal is to try to get their metabolism to do more work for them, right? Rather than you doing the work manually and trying to burn it off yourself, let's see if we can get your metabolism to kind of do the work. So that's kind of the question you want to ask yourself. And it's a lot more complicated than that. I'm really oversimplifying. Like, you can improve satiety by changing the types of foods you eat. Obviously, more protein is incredibly satiety producing. Whole foods, boy, that makes a big difference. Something I learned about 10 years into my career was that if I told clients to eat as much as they wanted, but just to avoid heavily processed food, they would all lose like 10 pounds. Why? Because they would automatically eat less, because whole natural foods they just produce more satiety. So it's definitely more complicated than what I'm saying. But generally speaking, that's pretty true.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good rule of thumb overall. And even the same thing with bulking, right? Trying to eat real whole foods. Like, it's hard to gain weight. And I tried to do that myself because I was like that genetically small person and I got lean. And I was like, this is the most impossible thing ever to try to put on some weight and muscle. And I needed to. I got to a point where I seriously needed to, or my metabolism was going to suffer, my hormones and everything else. And because I had gut issues, I was like, I'm not going to go eat, like fast food or, eat a bunch of that types of food. And so I tried to do it with like real whole food. And I was like, man, I can like barely put on weight. And then I'm bloated because of all the fiber that I was eating from fruits and vegetables. So yeah, it can definitely be a challenge or very beneficial, right? Depending on the foods that you're eating, if you're trying to lose weight. So quality for sure matters.
Totally.
Talking about metabolism, what are some of the biggest myths you see in like the fitness industry where people are like, do X, Y, Z to boost your metabolism, that every time you hear it, you're just like, please stop saying that?
Yeah, I'd say one of the biggest ones is let's talk about this for a second. Building muscle speeds up your metabolism. That's very true. Now, you do see some of the science side of the fitness space will say things like, a pound of muscle only burns an extra 15 calories. So it's not that big of a difference. That's not entirely true, because we all, with our current lean body mass, our bodies can become more or less efficient with how it utilizes calories. So depending on your lifestyle, stress levels, hormone levels, of course, that affects nutrient partitioning. Does it go to muscle? Does it go to body fat, right? Does it get burned? Depending on activity, I can burn more or less calories with my current lean body mass. So it's not necessarily gain a pound of muscle, burn this many more calories. It's also, am I sending a signal that says be more, or am I sending signals that say be more efficient or less efficient with calories? So what are more efficient signals? A lot of stress, lack of sleep, anything that is too much of a stress on the body or any high stress tells the body to conserve its own resources, right? So for most of human history, one of the biggest stresses that we had was that we didn't have enough food. So anytime we were under a lot of stress, our body's like, hold on to body fat, keep this body fat on our bodies. So that's one way to move the needle, is to manage stress a little better. Another one is to do strength training. Strength training tells the body to prioritize strength and muscle, which is a wonderful way to speed up the metabolism. And strength training itself doesn't burn a lot of calories. So you're not necessarily telling your body to become more efficient with calories. For example, cardiovascular activity burns a lot of calories, doesn't build a lot of muscle and strength. And so doing lots of cardio can sometimes send the signal to the body to become more efficient. So those of us in the gym industry, we used to call these people cardio bunnies. They'd come in and just do tons and tons and tons of cardio, eat very little calories. Couldn't figure out why they couldn't lose, the last 20 or 30 pounds. Now, as far as myths are concerned, this one's a little bit more well-known, but, back when I was running gyms, one of the biggest myths was if you ate small meals throughout the day, you would speed up your metabolism. So instead of eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, eat 6 meals a day. And then the theory went, well, when you're eating, you're stoking that metabolic fire. You're not going into quote unquote starvation mode, and that'll end up speeding up the metabolism. Well, that turned out to be false. There's a thermic effect that comes from digesting food, but the thermic effect is strongly correlated, or there's a strong relationship between the amount of food and the thermic effect. So 3 large meals, 3 large thermic effects, 6 small meals, 6 small thermic effects. It turns out it really doesn't make a difference at all. The difference is in behaviors. Some people feel more satiated eating small meals. It's easier for them to control their appetite. Other people find the opposite. Eating 1 meal or 2 meals a day tends to provide more satiety or reduce their appetite. Now, that's not considering potential hormonal effects of eating more or less. For example, if you have a woman who's got some estrogen and progesterone imbalances under a lot of stress, she would probably benefit from not eating too infrequently. Eating too infrequently would just add a little bit more stress on her already overstressed body, in which case that would tip the scales more towards fat storage versus fat burning. So that person I would encourage, like when you wake up, eat a fat protein breakfast, make sure we don't go more than 3 hours without meals, type of deal. But the old adage, like small meals speeds up the metabolism, totally false.
Yeah, I've spoken to that one too, especially around gut health, just because a lot of gut issues actually come from constantly grazing throughout the day because we disrupt our body's migrating motor complex, those cleaning waves in our gut there too. And I've even heard from a lot of people that the reason as to why they want to eat the small frequent meals, yes, because of the thermic effect of food, but fear of loss of muscle mass. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's false. So it turns out that doesn't make that big of a difference. You have to go pretty long without food for that to happen. Now, here's the reason why bodybuilders and people who are really focused on building muscle do better eating small meals, because they're eating a lot of calories. So if I'm eating, like for me, right, I weigh about 215 pounds or so, and I need to consume about 3,500 calories a day. 3 meals, that's 11, 13, 1,200 calories each meal or so. That's a big breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Kind of bogs me down. It's just, it doesn't feel good. So I'm better off eating 5 or 6 meals. And this is why you see people who are concerned with muscle building, who have more body mass, who have faster metabolisms as a result, why they benefit from eating smaller meals, because it's hard to eat 3 massive meals. It tends to be easier to eat 6 smaller meals. But as far as like the muscle building effect of constantly feeding yourself protein, all things being equal, we're splitting hairs. We really are. I always point to which one feels better for you, which one is more sustainable for you, because ultimately the one that you can sustain, the one that you can maintain, is the one that's going to be most effective. So even if there were a 1% difference, but you couldn't continue the other way, even if it's 1% better, like what's the use? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So the average Joan who's, let's say 20, 30 pounds overweight does not need to worry about eating every 3 hours because she's going to lose her muscle mass and mess up her metabolism.
No, in
What
fact,
we're safe to say.
yeah, no. So I mean, if we want to go a little deeper, right? So that started with bodybuilders because they found that it was easier to eat 6 meals than it was to eat 3 big meals. Then the supplement industry got involved, and they found that, wow, if we promote this idea that you need to eat protein every 2 hours, or you need to eat a meal every 2 hours, that's 5-6 meals a day. That's very inconvenient for people unless they have prepackaged protein bars or protein shakes. And so this was how the supplement industry really started to take off. If you really look at the marketing and around supplements, right around the 80s, I'd say late 80s, early 90s, they started to take off because they pushed this model of eat breakfast, eat a bar, eat lunch, eat a bar, eat dinner, or, breakfast shake, lunch shake, dinner shake type of deal. So they just pushed this myth further. And it's totally false. Your eat whole natural foods always better, and based off your preference. Really, that's what I always tell people. Like, what feels better, then go with that.
Yeah, whatever you're going to be able to maintain in the long run.
Totally.
What is your thoughts on fasting for metabolism?
I don't like fasting for any other reason than the potential, for lack of a better term, spiritual benefit or behavioral psychological benefit. I don't like it for any other reason. I don't like it for weight loss because we used to call that starving yourself. And I really don't like it if somebody has a history or a tendency towards eating disorders. Like, one of the worst things you could do is tell somebody who has ever dealt with anorexia or bulimia or orthorexia or tended towards that direction to fast just because we named it something different now. Here, don't eat. And it's like, you're really going to do this person a lot of harm. So I don't like it. I never promote it for body composition changes at all. I will promote it for convenience for some people, so long as they have a good relationship with food. Hey, if it's convenient for you and you find that you're sharper if you don't eat until noon or whatever, like, that's cool, go for it. I really like it for its detachment effects. It's, again, for lack of a better term, not trying to go esoteric here, but the spiritual effects. What do I mean by that? Well, fasting is present in every major religion in the world for a reason. Food is so important to us. We're so attached to it. And going without food can be quite beneficial, because if you look at people in modern societies and you're really honest with the reasons why we eat, actual hunger is way down the list. Most people in modern societies have never really even felt true hunger. I mean, we haven't gone a day without eating. So what do we eat for? Cravings, depression, anxiety, boredom, social situation, I want to just the hedonistic, aspect of it, right? So going without food for those reasons can be very beneficial, because now you go 48 hours or 24 hours without food, and you come home from work stressed, and normally you would grab something to eat, and you don't have that. So you got to deal with your feelings. Or, oh, I get so irritable around lunchtime, but now you're not going to eat. All of a sudden you find I'm not so irritable. Maybe it was the anticipation of getting that meal, or maybe I can focus on other things. So it'll help you kind of redefine this relationship that you have. That's one of the most ingrained relationships we have, which is food. So for the spiritual effects, again, I just don't have a better word to use. I love it. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. By the way, I use fasting for electronics. I use fasting for supplements, for any substances, exercise, anything that you use as a way to distract yourself or deal with feelings, emotions, or situations. I think fasting can be super valuable, and it doesn't have to just be with food.
So many of you guys know my story of losing my health, dealing with hormonal imbalances, thyroid issues, depression, anxiety, and gut issues that were so severe. I almost had my entire large intestine removed, and Western medicine completely failed me. They gave me trash can diagnosis like IBS, depression, gave me a bunch of medications. And, if I wouldn't have taken my health in my own hands today, I would be without an entire organ, like literally. And that's why I created what I wish I had. what I needed, a holistic mind and body approach, a functional medicine approach that said, why do we have this problem in the first place? And what can we do to restore function? This is the difference between thriving instead of just surviving and managing your symptoms. So if you're somebody who is sick and tired of being sick and tired, dealing with stubborn gut issues or hormonal imbalances or weight loss that you feel like is not moving anywhere, or thyroid issues and autoimmune condition, there is hope. There is another approach. And me and my team of registered dietitians, we want to help you. We want to be the support there for you. We want to do the functional medicine lab testing, look at your gut, your hormones, your thyroid, your adrenals, deficiencies, toxins that can have in your body, get to know what you're doing with your nutrition, look at your lifestyle, look at your previous medical history, and help you create a customized plan to not just only heal, but get to the best health of your entire life. So if you're somebody who's ready to take a root cause approach to healing and step into the best version of you, fill out our application on our website, rachelscheer.com, and book a free 30-minute call. Absolutely free to do this call. Our goal on this call is to better get to know your goals and how this approach may work for you. So click the link in the show notes and book a free call if you would like to learn more. Yeah. And for most people, or not most people, everybody, right, is fasting every single night. What do you feel like is that optimal period? I know it varies for each person when it's 12 hours every single night. So stop eating 2 hours before bed, eat right when you wake up in the morning. I know a lot of people who say right when you wake up in the morning, you should eat immediately. Some people say you should wait 2 hours. What is your role on fasting in regards to a normal fast every single night?
So as far as the evening is concerned, the most important thing to consider is your sleep and your sleep quality. Most people do best if they don't eat about 2 or 3 hours before they go to bed. Okay, so studies will show that optimal sleep patterns are more likely to be achieved if you didn't eat about, like I said, 2 or 3 hours before bed. Now, in the morning, this is where you get a lot more of an individual variance. If you're somebody that deals with blood sugar issues, and you might not know that you deal with these issues, but you might have irritability, brain fog, cravings, whatever. Eating pretty quickly, or you don't have to rush out of bed. I think you should wake up a little bit, but right around the time you wake up, it's a good idea to eat a high protein meal with some fat. And studies show that doing that will actually blunt the blood sugar rises and drops throughout the day, regardless of what you eat. So all other things being equal, if you start your day with protein and fat, then you'll have a better effect later on. And that leads to behaviors that are more beneficial to health. Okay. Now, if you're somebody with gut issues, okay, like I'm one of those people, right? I tend to deal with gut issues. Sometimes going longer without food is better. It gives my gut a bit of a break. When my gut is really off, I do better with eating less frequently, not more frequently. So I'll wake up and I won't eat for 2 or 3 hours. In fact, that's what I've done for a long time for those reasons. And also because I got 4 kids, I have a business. The only time I can work out is at 6:30 in the morning, and I'm not going to wake up at 4:30 and eat. So I wake up and then I go work out. So I don't usually eat until about 9 a.m. So I'll wake up at 5:30. My first meal doesn't happen until about 9 a.m. And that's just, again, it works best with my lifestyle.
Yeah. And people who are healing and they have something that's off, whether it's gut issues, like, for example, fasting can be beneficial for healing the gut, right? If there's chronic inflammation, there's dysbiosis, if there's SIBO, I always say it's kind of like a broken leg. Like, you got to get off of it for a period of time, give it a chance to rest and heal. So I would say that's like another circumstance where fasting, and it doesn't mean it has to be a long fast, but fast can be very beneficial. They actually utilize like an elemental diets quite a bit for people who have a ton of gut issues. Elemental diets are really just giving people the very minimal, like pure amino acids, right? Dextrose, they're giving them, MCT oils, and the results are incredible for helping people heal from chronic gut dysfunction, autoimmune conditions, and all of that. So,
Totally.
I would agree with that part as well too. What is your thoughts on genetics in
Yeah.
body composition?
Yeah. So, of course, genetics play a role in pretty much everything. I don't like to focus on genetics though, because, besides epigenetics, which is, your lifestyle influences, I don't like to focus on genetics because we can't control that. You've got your genes. Why focus on what you can't control? I think you're better off long term. Well, I know you're better off long term if you can focus on what you can control. Like when I would train clients, if I had the client that just couldn't get out of their head that their genetics were just, I have fat genetics, or I have, skinny genetics, and they just couldn't get beyond that. It was really hard to get them to develop a lifelong relationship with a good relationship with exercise and nutrition, because they were so focused on what they couldn't control. So I don't like to focus on that. So that's just from a coach standpoint. Okay. Now, if we look at the science, and, being objective, yeah, I mean, geez, genetics play a huge role, but here's the funny thing too. This is where it gets funny. Everybody thinks they're somewhere on the extremes. The odds are you're probably somewhere in the middle. Like I got over here, pro athlete genetics, which are super rare. Like let's talk about a pro bodybuilder. Okay. The type of genetics you need to be able to build the type of muscle that a pro bodybuilder can build is about as rare as the genetics that you would have to be 7 feet tall. Okay. So think about all the times, besides if you've ever been to an NBA game, how many times have you seen anybody that was 7 foot tall? Right? Never. I mean, it's almost, I think I remember one time I saw somebody. Super rare. Well, those kind of genetics are super rare. Then way over here, you have the other side of the genetics where it's like, body fat gain, where there's nothing I could do and I just can't build any muscle. And I have, genetics where I have, muscular issues and movement issues and CNS issues, right? And everybody likes to think that they're over here, right? Oh, I've got these terrible, no. 99.9% of us are somewhere in the middle of genetics. We're all walk around. We're all more similar than we are on those extremes. Very rare, again, to walk into run into someone who's 7 feet tall. So I wouldn't focus on genetics at all. Just focus on what you can control, which is your lifestyle and the way you feel and things that you can do to influence all of those things. And then again, genetics, when we talk about genetics, we tend to focus on our appearance. And, this is going to sound funny coming from a fitness guy, but you can be very appearance focused. And what you'll accomplish eventually is poor health. Okay. So if you're constantly chasing aesthetics, you're constantly chasing a look, at some point you will sacrifice your health, and then your health, your looks are gone anyway. Like you got poor health, your aesthetics are gone anyway. So I like to tell people to focus on health. Focus on health, and the side effect of which is the appearance, is the aesthetics. Chase the health, and all that other stuff follows. I mean, we could, I used to do an exercise with clients where I'd tell them to close their eyes, and I'd say, now I'd like you to imagine yourself in perfect health, both physically, mentally, psychologically, and spiritually. And they'd say, okay. And I'd say, now what does that person look like? Well, they look generally lean, generally muscular, good mobility, good skin, vibrant. Well, that's the side effect of great health. So that genetic conversation tends to, again, it gets us to thinking about how I look. It's like, let's not place we can't control that anyway. Let's focus on the stuff we can control.
Yeah, I always say focus on how you want to feel every single day. Like I tell my clients, like, I want to wake up, I want to feel excited about every single day. I want to have like so much energy that I'm creative in my work. And, I want to feel good after I eat my meals. I don't want to have to think about food too much, but I want to enjoy the food that I eat. Like we should enjoy the food, but
Yes.
it not taste so good that you can't stop eating it because it's a bunch of foods where now, food is really what controls us. And I want to exercise every single day because it makes me feel confident, because I love the way I feel after, and I feel that strength in the gym. And then I want to sleep great at night. And that is my indicator of overall health. And then as a byproduct, my body composition is going to follow with that as well too.
Yeah. Along those lines, Rachel, you mentioned you want to enjoy your food. in modern societies, we've done such a great job of, we have these amazing markets that give us everything that we want. Okay. So what does that mean? By the way, we don't always want what we need. Oftentimes we want what we, what we shouldn't have is what we want. So what markets have done is they've created foods that are hyper palatable and very convenient. And now that that's been around for a while, we've learned to value and enjoy food simply based off of that, just on the hedonistic value of food. But here's the truth. You can learn to enjoy food based on its other values. So to give you an example, I know when I travel a lot sometimes for other podcasts, and it's hard to get really good quality vegetables when I travel. When I come home, I crave vegetables, not because of the flavor necessarily. Obviously, pizza tastes better than vegetables do, but because of the association and the relationship I have with those vegetables. I actually crave them. So, by the way, food manufacturers know this. Like, you'll never see, like, beer commercials. What do they show? The guy partying with the girls and the whatever. Like, they're always making associations. So what I used to tell clients is, if you pay attention to all of the values of the food that you're eating, because most of us don't even pay attention. Most people don't even know that their breakfast bagel is making them feel like crap at noon, or that the reason why they always have heartburn is because of what they eat at lunch. Like, if you pay attention to all the stuff and you notice, wow, when I eat this, my skin looks better. I have better energy. Wow, this really makes my digestion feel better. This improves my performance in the gym. This helps me feel sharper in my mind. Once you make those connections and you become aware, you'll actually find that you'll crave those foods and you'll enjoy eating them. So, and here's the story that I'm trying to paint here. If you enjoy eating healthy being in a way that serves you in the fullest way, then you'll always eat healthy. And you can get to that place. It's not just about the flavor or the hedonistic value. That's one aspect. It's like a relationship. Like, you have a partner. Part of the enjoyment of being with your partner is the hedonistic value of sex and stuff like that. But there's lots of other values in the relationship. If it was just that and everything else was terrible, it'd be a toxic relationship, right? So we have a toxic relationship with food because when people think about food, they think about just the hedonistic value because they've never really paid attention and tried to make other associations and connections.
Yeah. And I can attest to the associations part from someone who had gut issues. Like, one of the big reasons why I eat whole foods now, well, of course, of like what it does for my health, but I picture every time I eat like processed foods or I'm going out to eat, like I immediately associate that with pain. Because all my gut issues, like I immediately have that association of this equals gut issues. I'm not going to feel good. I don't want to eat it. And it like loses all of its appeal. And people always are like, how are you so disciplined? How do you not eat that food? I'm like, I have zero desire. Like, it does not even appeal to me.
That's it. Yep. You value it and you actually truly enjoy it. And the other stuff, yeah, I'm sure if you ate pizza, you know it tastes good. It's not like you're stupid, right? You know it's going to enjoy it. Right, yeah. Because you know it's going to, right, exactly. Enjoyment isn't just the taste. That's right.
Yeah. And I also even tell my clients, like, we enjoy like a good cut of steak, right? Enjoy steak. Most people do, at least. Give someone a sweet potato, give them some veggies, and we're going to also listen to our body's hunger cues. We're going to be like, this is a good meal. I'm enjoying this. And then I feel full and I feel satiated, and we're not going to overeat the steak. Very rarely we're going to overeat the steak and the sweet potato and the vegetables. But now give somebody a bunch of hyperpalatable foods, chips, ice cream, like you give that to me and like I will eat until the whole thing's gone. And then I'll be like, what's next? What's next? And then I'll feel like crap on top of it too. So I also think with the hyperpalatable foods, there's also, we can't really listen to our body's hunger cues very much to go along with it.
You can't trust your hunger cues because they've been hijacked. Remember the amount of money, the research and development that goes into processed foods, because processed foods are created, right? They're, for lack of a better term, invented foods. Not like chicken wasn't invented by people. Steak wasn't invented, eggs, milk, fruits, vegetables, but processed foods are, like an Oreo cookie, like someone had to create that, right? Someone had to create a potato chip. Somebody had to create, all of these processed foods. The vast majority of the billions of dollars of research and development that goes in these foods is how to make them hyper palatable, how to make them so enjoyable to your brain, for example, in that sense, that you will actually overeat it, that it'll override your body's natural signals and systems of satiety. So, and this isn't just me giving my experience. Some of the best studies done on food have been done on this. One of the challenges with nutrition studies are a lot of them are observational, and this as well as I do. You tell someone to report what they ate, last 4 days, and they're going to be notoriously inaccurate, right? So, but the studies that they've recently done on heavily processed foods are phenomenal. They'll take groups of people, they'll put them in a room, so they'll watch them, and they'll even make sure the macros are similar in both rooms. This room, heavily processed food, this room, whole natural foods. Then they'll have them eat as much as they want. Then they take the groups and they switch rooms, just in case you had, people that eat more in this room than that one. Then they switch them. 600 calories on average. People eat more when they eat heavily processed food. So again, it's not just our experience. They are engineered really, really well to make you want to eat more. And just avoiding them means you're going to eat more appropriately, because your body doesn't want to be obese either. There's this myth that we're eating machines, that because we evolved and food was hard to come by, that if you just put food in for us, we're going to stuff ourselves until we get sick. No, that would have killed us a long time ago too. I mean, you have, people died of diarrhea all the time, hundreds of years ago, let alone thousands. So our bodies will naturally reach this. Now, you're not going to get shredded doing this. You're also not going to be obese. If you eat whole natural foods, your body will naturally tell you how much you need to eat, and not more, not less.
So simply put, guys, if you want to reach optimal body composition, first start eating real whole food as much as possible. Like it can be that easy, but the hard part is really the behaviors, which is everything that you've talked about as well. Yeah. What's your thought on set point theory? Because that's something that I've been interested in. So that's like a selfish question for me, but like getting your body to stay at a different body fat percentage than what it's been at for most of its life.
Yeah, there's two parts of that, right? There's your genetic part of it, right? Which is like how tall you are, your propensity to build muscle and store body fat. Although I will say most of us are pretty average. We're not extremes. That plays a role. But then there's also lifestyle. And I want to be very clear. Your lifestyle is very hard to change in fundamental, permanent ways. We cannot overstate this. So people are like, oh, I lose weight, and then I go back to the set point weight, or I gain weight and I go back to the set point weight. Well, that's because your lifestyle, you have a lifestyle, you have behaviors, and how you eat, how you move, why you eat, why you move, the relationship you have with those things is something that's pretty strongly ingrained, very difficult to change. So a lot of set point also has to do with just our lifestyles. And if we just kind of let go with the flow, unless we really work on changing these relationships that we have and these behaviors in real ways, we'll just kind of revert back. This is why, kids that grow up with obese parents have an 80%, something like that, 80% chance of being obese. That's not because they have obese genetics. That's not true. Obesity was almost non-existent 100, 200 years ago. It's because they grew up and they learned and they ingrained an obese lifestyle. So that now has become a part of their psyche and how they live. And so that's a part of their set point. So there's those 2 points that we want to consider. Can you change your set point? You can mainly through changing your behaviors and your lifestyle. So I have a set point that is at a particular set point if I strength train 4 days a week on a consistent basis. I have a set point that my body will go to if I stop strength training. I have a set point. I used to compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I had a body weight that I would tend to be at, right? There were times when I ate a ketogenic diet for other reasons, right? There were some health reasons that I did so. And my set point was a little different there than when I ate carbohydrates. So I think it's more on your lifestyle than it is on some strange,
like genetic predisposition of where your body fat should stay. Yeah,
exactly.
And for everybody who doesn't know what set point is, it's where your body most easily can maintain at, where you don't have to have a whole lot of effort into it. So some people try to lean out and then they end up kind of bringing their body fat back up a little bit over time. They're like, oh, I can only get down there for a very short period of time. Or vice versa, someone will maybe gain a little bit of weight and that was their goal, but then they kind of slowly drift back to where their body composition was. That's really what set point theory is. And if that's genetic or if that's more lifestyle and behavior. And for what you're saying is it's more behavior and lifestyle.
It's got to be both. Like, I think with your genetics, you probably have a range, and your lifestyle will determine whether or not you're on this side of the range or this side of the range. That's what I think. And I think pushing outside that range is where it gets like you had mentioned earlier, you're naturally leaner.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your range is here, pushing you out here. Like, you could probably do it, but it would feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It would feel uncomfortable
right.
for you. Right. So I think that there's definitely a range that are determined by your genetics, but your lifestyle helps determine where you're in that range. And it's, it gives you a bit of space. Pushing outside of that to the extremes, then it's like, okay, now I gotta live in a way that doesn't necessarily feel sustainable for me.
Yeah. And I know for like a lot of bodybuilders too, like they kind of try to push that limit. And then as soon as they come off of whether it's hormones or they stop eating 8 meals a day, like their body naturally gravitates. But that's like for a lot of them, they're carrying like an amount of muscle that isn't even natural, like for the body to carry. So naturally it's gonna, cannibalize that if it's not eating
Totally.
5,000 calories every single day. If you were to rank like in order, what's most important for body composition, what order would you rank it in?
Ooh, okay. So do you want like metrics, or can I talk more the psychological aspect? Well, let me do this. I would say at the top, above everything else, is your relationship to food. Okay. Do you eat in a way to take care of yourself, or do you eat in a way because you hate yourself? Okay. So in other words, you look in the mirror, you're overweight. Do you say, ew, that's gross, I hate the way I look? Or do you say, oh man, like, I haven't been taking care of myself, I deserve to be taken care of? Okay. So that makes a big difference, because if I eat in a way to take care of myself, I'm more likely to enjoy the process of eating healthy. If I eat in a way because I hate myself, it's going to feel restrictive. And I'm going to also work out in a way that feels like punishment, right? So it's like the difference between someone offers me a cookie and I say, no, I can't have that cookie, right? That's the restrictive. Or no, thanks, I don't want it because I want to take care of myself. So I would say that's number one. Now, besides that, high protein is phenomenal, generally speaking. Eating around 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight in normal body weight individuals. If you're obese, you probably want to use your lean body mass as that number. But high protein, it controls blood sugar better, which helps dictate some of your behaviors and cravings. It's very, very satiety producing. Protein just makes you not want to overeat. So I'll put that up there. Whole natural foods has got to be up there as well, because it leads more towards, again, satiety, not wanting to overeat, eating kind of healthy. And I would say those are got to be the most important things. And then, underneath all of that, making sure that you're not lacking any essential nutrients. Nutrient deficiencies can do funny things. Like if you're lacking magnesium, for example, you can feel anxious, and some people tend to, quell their anxiety with food. So that can lead to overeating, for example.
Fats are big. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I would say those are the most important things. And then, if you go down from there, then you can get more into the specifics, like counting your macros and, meal timing and that kind of stuff.
Where would training fall in there? So relationship with food, high protein, whole foods, nutrient deficiencies.
Strength training is very, very high on the list, because strength training is the only form of exercise that consistently tells the body to preserve or build muscle, which is your part of your fat burning machinery. It's also part of the way you store glycogen, right? So it helps with how you store carbohydrates. It leads to, again, the faster metabolism. It leads to better controlled insulin. Muscle is very insulin sensitive. It's very protective. Building muscle doesn't require as much time in the gym. Like, you could work out 2 days a week with good strength training and build a decent amount of muscle and strength. Other forms of exercise, in order to exert their benefits, require a lot more time in the gym. You'd have to do it a lot, right? So less time in the gym. Muscle sticks on the body longer. So if I build muscle, let's say I gain 10 pounds of muscle and then I stop lifting weights, I don't lose muscle as fast as I would lose, let's say, endurance or stamina. Muscle kind of sticks around the body. And the amount of training volume to keep muscle is much lower than is required to build muscle. So they've done studies on this where people will build, 20 pounds of muscle, and then, well, how little can you train to keep it? And it's like 1/5, like 1/5 to 1/9 the volume just to keep it. And then lastly, when you build muscle, and this is well documented, you have something called muscle memory. So if it took you a year to gain 10 pounds of muscle, and then, let's say something happened, you got sick, you stopped working out, whatever, you lost all 10 pounds of it, you'd gain that 10 pounds back if you went back to the gym in like a month. It might have taken you a year to gain it the first time, but you'll gain it back much faster the second time around. And now, why is that all important? Because we're dealing with the average person for the most part. And the average person is not a fitness fanatic. They don't want to work out every single day. They're going to miss weeks here and there. They're going to stop working out sometimes. So why not use the form of exercise that gives you the most bang for your buck, the biggest effect, that also is going to stick around the most and is the easiest to do in the sense of, requiring the least amount of time. So strength training is, when it comes to body composition, there's nothing comes close. It's the best body composition form of exercise you can do.
If someone had, let's say, 15 minutes to work out every single day, is there any like top workouts you'd say this is what you should do for strength training?
That's so funny you said that, Rachel. One of the most, through my podcast, we sell workout programs. And one of the most popular programs we've ever sold was a program called MAPS 15, which is exactly that. It's 15 minutes a day. There's an advanced version on there that's about 20 minutes a day. And if you add up the total time, it's like 2 1-hour workouts, right? But it's just 15 minutes every single day. And yeah, I mean, you could do 2 compound lifts a day. You could use a suspension trainer if you don't have a gym, or if you got a barbell, you could go do, some squats and some overhead presses one day, some bench presses and rows another day. Absolutely, 100%. In fact, when we wrote the program, I did kind of an abbreviated version of it, or a modified version. I was doing about 25 minutes a day, but that's because I've been training for so long. And I actually hit a PR in a deadlift at my age, more than I ever did in my 30s through training that way. So you can get phenomenal results with strength training with as little as 15 minutes a day. I don't know of any other form of exercise that'll necessarily do that.
Yeah. One of my busiest periods in my life with my business, I actually would do like mini little circuits throughout the day, because I was like, I can get in 15 minutes in the morning. I would do it around lunch, and then I would do another circuit mid-afternoon, and then in the evening time, and I would get a whole full hour workout in. And it was awesome. My energy levels like stayed peak all day long. And I was like, more people need to be doing this for like peak just performance in their work. But I had a at-home gym. So
I'll tell you what, Rachel, if you look at the Soviet studies on weightlifting, the Soviets dominated weightlifting for decades, right? They would do things like all day workouts. And what you would do is, and I experimented with this myself. So this is not by any stretch of the imagination necessarily convenient, but if you're super advanced and you're watching this and you really want to see, like, you want to really behold how crazy this is, if you have access to a gym or home gym, every other hour, maybe 5 to 6 times, go do 3 compound lifts, spend 15 minutes, and then the next hour take it off and then do it again, and then take the next hour off and then do it again. You'll end up with a tremendous amount of total volume that you would have never been able to accomplish in a workout. You'll feel stronger towards the end of the day as you're doing it. And then, I'm not making this up, you literally, like, you can see results within one workout. Like, literally the next day, you look in the mirror and be like, oh my God, I think I built a little bit of muscle. It's actually pretty cool. In fact, breaking workouts up, some people can't do it because it's just not convenient. But if you could do that throughout the day, you'll probably get better results doing the same workout.
Yeah. And you literally feel awesome all day long too.
Yes.
That was my favorite part. Like, it wasn't even about the strength, but I was like, I did not get a midday like energy drop at all. So like in between podcasts and clients, I was like, this is great. This is what I would love to do every day, but it's not always realistic for a lot of people, but I might try what you're talking about.
Oh, it's fun.
Last question. What's your thoughts on supplements? I know that's probably lower in the ranking of everything that we're talking about, but are there certain supplements that have been shown to be good for body composition?
Yeah. So supplements can be very high on the list of importance or very low depending on the individual. If you have a nutrient deficiency, like an essential nutrient deficiency, supplements are a game changer. Okay. So if you have a vitamin D deficiency, a magnesium deficiency, a B vitamin deficiency, iron, whatever, and you supplement with that essential nutrient, life-changing. Okay. Life-changing. You'll notice things like your depression, anxiety, skin issues, energy, like all your challenges like disappear. So if you can get your nutrient levels tested to see if you have any nutrient deficiencies, if you find any, supplementing to fill those deficiencies can be a total game changer. Now, beside that, when it comes to body composition, there's no better supplement. If you get, okay, here, let me paint the context. You eat a good diet. Okay. So I have a good diet already. Then, and I want to add something to it, creatine. There's no other supplement that's better studied. It leads to muscle gain, fat loss indirectly through the muscle gain. It has heart protective effects, cognitive boosting effects. It's now a longevity supplement. I mean, when it first came out in the 90s, when I was a kid, it was all about building muscle. But now we're looking and we're like, wow, this is actually a longevity booster. I recommend creatine to everybody. I think it's one of the best supplements you could take regardless of your goal. So it's like, essential nutrient deficiency. And then if you got that, throw some creatine on it. And then there's other stuff you can take depending on, if you work with like a functional medicine practitioner, they may recommend certain herbs and supplements to assist you in whatever you're doing. But besides the ones I listed, I think everything else is all dependent on the individual.
This has been awesome and super helpful. And I know everybody's going to take so much away from this. Where can people follow you, check out your podcast, and see all the things that you're doing?
Yeah. So Mind Pump, you can find Mind Pump on any podcast platform or on YouTube. We now film all of our podcasts. So it's YouTube, it's Mind Pump. And then if you want to just find me individually, I'm on Twitter at Mind Pump Sal.
Awesome. Thank you, Sal. And this has been Optimal Body RX.